In a momentous move that has captured the attention of Africa and the international community, Mali's interim president Colonel Assimi Goïta has cancelled 8 out of the 11 colonial agreements with France. These pacts, established during the twilight of Mali's colonization in 1959, have been deeply entwined with Mali's political, economic, and social fabric for over 6 decades. As the country steps forward to redefine its sovereignty, many are left wondering about the implications of these cancelled agreements and the remaining stipulations that still tie Mali to its colonial past. This move signals a powerful step toward achieving genuine independence, free from the shadow of France's colonial influence. The current framework still holds 3 agreements from the original Colonial Pact, which notably include the continued use of the CFA Franc, FCFA. Let's delve into the details of these agreements, their impact, and what Goïta's decision could mean for Mali and West Africa as a whole. When Mali attained independence in 1960, it was not a clean break from France. Instead, 11 binding agreements were established to protect French economic and political interests in Mali and maintain French influence over its former colony. These agreements encompass various domains, from economic policies to military operations, and have effectively stifled Mali's sovereignty for years. Mali's reliance on the CFA franc, a currency originally pegged to the French franc, is a testament to how the legacy of colonial control has survived into the present day. These agreements are part of a broader phenomenon often referred to as the Colonial Pact, which France signed with numerous former colonies. The pact required former colonies to repay France for the infrastructure and administrative structures built during colonization. While framed as a debt repayment, it has, in reality, functioned as a continuous drain on Mali's economic resources. Goïta's cancellation of most of these agreements signals a definitive rejection of France's historical dominance in Mali's internal matters. Of the 11 agreements, 3 remain intact, centered primarily on the continued use of the CFA franc. But beyond this symbolic currency, let's explore some of the more specific stipulations under the Colonial Pact. The colonial debt for repayment of colonization profits is an enduring thorn in the side of African economies, binding former colonies to repay France for the investments made during colonization. Despite the oppressive nature of colonialism and the extensive extraction of African resources, former colonies are still expected to repay their colonizers. This arrangement drains financial resources that could be invested in Mali's healthcare, education, and infrastructure. For Mali, each year means a significant outflow of capital that could be directed toward national development. The automatic confiscation clause mandates that if Mali deposits funds in any international bank, France reserves the right to access and withdraw those funds as compensation for alleged colonial debts. The clause effectively allows France to exert financial leverage over Mali, preventing the country from freely managing its own resources. Automatic confiscation is widely viewed as a predatory and colonial measure that ensures Mali remains financially subservient to France. Military aid and strategic locations permitted French military presence in Mali, ostensibly for security purposes. However, the presence of foreign military personnel has sparked criticism, as it often means Mali's defense strategies are intertwined with French military interests. Goïta's government has opposed this influence, asserting that Mali's security should be managed domestically. By cancelling agreements associated with military aid, Goïta has paved the way for Mali to control its own defense initiatives without outside intervention. Of all the remaining agreements, the CFA franc is perhaps the most contentious. Established in 1945 and later adapted as the FCFA Franc des colonies françaises d'Afrique, this currency has long served as a vehicle for France's economic influence in West and Central Africa. Pegged initially to the French franc and now to the euro, the CFA franc effectively binds Mali's economy to that of Europe. The CFA system has been criticized as a mechanism that stifles economic growth by controlling monetary policy through the French treasury, which mandates that CFA nations keep 50% of their reserves in France. For Mali, the CFA franc restricts its ability to set interest rates and respond flexibly to economic challenges. Critics argue that the CFA is an outdated colonial relic and that its stability benefits French interests rather than African prosperity. While Goïta's recent moves did not dismantle this system entirely, the cancellation of the related agreements suggests that Mali may ultimately seek to abandon the CFA Franc in favor of a currency that promotes economic independence. Goïta's decision has both practical and symbolic implications. In practical terms, it grants Mali greater autonomy over its resources, defense, and economic policies. However, it also poses challenges as Mali transitions away from French support and adjusts its fiscal policies without the security net previously provided by France. Mali's government will need to carefully navigate international markets to replace or reconfigure these aspects of its economy. Symbolically, Goïta's action signifies a declaration of true independence. It sends a powerful message not only to Malians, but to other African nations still entangled in similar agreements. Leaders across Africa may see Mali as an example and feel emboldened to renegotiate or dissolve their own colonial agreements, inspiring a regional push toward genuine sovereignty. The decision to cancel colonial agreements has received broad support among Malians, who view the Colonial Pacts as an unjust legacy of exploitation. Many in Mali's civil society believe this move reflects Goïta's commitment to sovereignty and self-determination. Citizens have expressed optimism about finally breaking free from neo-colonial control, hoping that these changes will lead to improved economic conditions and a reinvigorated national identity. However, some economists and international observers have raised concerns about the potential financial instability that could accompany these decisions. The cancellation of agreements that assured French investment and military support may leave Mali vulnerable, especially given the security challenges in the region. Mali's move away from these colonial agreements places the onus on Goïta's government to build strong alliances with other nations that respect Mali's sovereignty, while still maintaining economic stability. Mali's bold stance could have ripple effects throughout West Africa, where many countries share a history of French colonial agreements that undermine their economic and political sovereignty. By cancelling these agreements, Mali is challenging the notion that African nations must conform to European standards or operate under European control to achieve stability. Instead, Goïta is advocating for an African-centered approach to development. Countries like Burkina Faso and Niger, who are also re-evaluating their colonial ties to France, could be encouraged by Mali's example. The prospect of an African alliance, unshackled from neo-colonial constraints, could become a reality if more nations assert their sovereignty. This would not only reshape Africa's economic landscape, but also send a clear message to former colonial powers. Africa is ready to define its own path forward. Mali's decision to cancel these colonial agreements opens up a world of opportunities and challenges. To succeed, Mali must invest in developing its industries, strengthening its infrastructure, and creating jobs for its citizens. The government must ensure that funds previously directed toward colonial debt are channeled into national priorities like healthcare, education, and technology. Mali will also need to consider whether it will continue using the CFA Franc or create its own currency. While adopting a national currency would be a significant step towards full independence, it requires substantial planning and international support. A stable currency would empower Mali to make decisions in the best interests of its economy rather than remaining at the mercy of the French treasury. Additionally, Mali's new independence in defense policy could enable it to partner with countries that respect its sovereignty. By seeking military alliances with nations that prioritize equal partnerships, Mali can build a robust national defense and protect its citizens without external interference. In 2024, Mali stands at a historic crossroads, with the recent cancellation of colonial agreements marking a decisive step towards complete sovereignty. Goïta's bold decisions signal a call for self-reliance and economic empowerment, challenging the long-standing influence of France in West Africa. By addressing the colonial debt, military dependency, and economic ties through the CFA Franc, Mali is setting an inspiring precedent for other nations striving to escape the grip of neo-colonialism. This move not only shapes Mali's future, but also carries the potential to redefine the power dynamics in West Africa. As Mali charts its course towards independence and self-determination, it ignites hope for a future where African nations can rise on their own terms. Mali's journey reflects a commitment to breaking free from colonial legacies and embracing an era of authentic independence.